John?
All right, Gene Casares, just one of the many stories in there. We're joined by a panel of legal analysts right now. Danny Savalas, I want to start with you. We heard the stories from Gene Casares. The statistics in the report just as stunning. This is from the New York Times. Baltimore, a city that is 63% black. The Justice Department found that 91% of those arrested for discretionary offenses like failure to obey or trespassing were African American. Blacks make up 60% of Baltimore's drivers, but account for 82% of traffic stops. Of the 410 pedestrians who were stopped at least 10 times in the 5.5 years of data reviewed, 95% were black.
And that's one of the findings of the DOJ, that because of Baltimore's policing practices, their training, that resulted in a disparity. When you compare the rates of arrests against the population of African Americans in the community, there's a disparity. And that alone is a form of discrimination, in so many words, by the DOJ. And it really goes back, according to the report, to the late or mid-1990s when they adopted a zero-tolerance policy in the Baltimore Police Department, which led to a lot of stops, a lot of investigatory detentions, searches, seizures, frisks. And according to the DOJ, the modern view is more community-oriented policing. This is also proactive policing, but it involves a different approach, one that the DOJ says is the better way.
Yeah, they said the way that they have been doing this proactive policing, not the way. Let's bring in Laura Coates right now, CNN legal analyst as well. Laura, one example also stuck out to me when the Justice Department official said one man was stopped more than 30 times in 4 years, resulting in no citations with any of those stops. Is anyone held accountable? What happens from here?
Well, apparently in Baltimore, you've got the problem of racial profiling is pervasive, and the Fourth Amendment and its protections are non-existent. And what the DOJ is trying to do now is to say, look, we know there's a problem. The community has told us there's been a problem for decades. Now we actually have concrete proof. We're going to go to court and get a consent decree that says you have got to make financial changes and training changes to ensure that your police department actually adheres to this very old concept of the Fourth Amendment. And, you know, one of the things that Danny was talking about is spot on, and John, you mentioned as well, is that, look, not only these discretionary offenses where officers can say, look, you failed to obey, you trespass, whatever I subjectively think is wrong conduct, the police department actually had templates to charge them that had pre-populated fields that said black male. It's profiling at its finest, and it's shocking to know that in a city like Baltimore, with over 400,000 black residents alone, have had to endure this level of profiling in an open environment.
I want to bring in CNN law enforcement analyst Tom Fuentes, former assistant director at the FBI. Tom, you've been a police officer. You know, no department, no office anywhere likes to be told what they've been doing for decades is not just wrong, but unconstitutional. However, there was a positive spin, as Gene Casares was saying, on this event today. Baltimore welcoming this report as a way to move forward. How do you think this will be received inside the police department?
I think the police department, in a lot of ways, might feel scapegoated that there are so many systemic problems in Baltimore that need to be addressed, and it always comes down to the police. Ms. Gupta cited lack of education, lack of employment opportunities, other problems in the minority community, and that's not the police's position to fix that. And until that gets fixed, they're still going to have a tremendous problem, tremendous challenge on the street trying to help or deal with the people in that community. So when they cite the statistics of so many more blacks than whites arrested, or there's a black Baltimore and a white Baltimore, does that start with, are there black schools and white schools that are vastly different? Are there black services and white services in the communities of Baltimore that are vastly different? So that is way beyond just correcting problems within the police department. Not that you shouldn't correct them, it has to be done, but I'm just saying that this is part of a huge problem of lack of resources, lack of attention to a community, and it's surprising given that you have a black mayor, you have many black city council members. Where have they been all these years? They must be aware that this is systemic in their communities. Now they have Department of Justice come in from Washington and slap them upside the head and say, fix this. You have to do something about this. You've ignored it for too long.
Yeah, now it's definitely right on their lap right now to fix it. Let's go right now to Billy Murphy. He is the attorney for Freddie Gray's family. Billy, this investigation by DOJ came in the aftermath of Freddie Gray's death. The investigation, the riots that happened on the streets of Baltimore in the aftermath of Freddie Gray's death. What does this mean for Freddie Gray's family?
Well, they're not shocked. They've had to live through this. What is shocking is how ineffective black leadership has been in addressing the problem or even communicating the gravity of the problem over so many years. One mayor after another mayor has been woefully accommodating to a white community that has a different experience with the police and who we hope will be shocked into a new reality about what needs to be done. This is a genuine emergency in the black community. It isn't something that we can cure by incremental steps. And all of the officers who've participated in these mass arrests can be systematically and statistically identified so that they can be promptly removed from this force. What is really truly shocking, and I say this again because it can't be said too much, is how many officers on the police force have participated in these systematic violations of the rights of the African American community. That can no longer be tolerated. Now, going forward, we're going to have an easier time if we implement police cameras properly, and that means there have to be severe penalties for turning the cameras on after stuff that is critical has already started, and there have to be severe penalties for turning them off prematurely and keeping them off. Officers have to be suspended for doing that. They have to be removed for doing that. And if we're going to keep this from being a joke about wringing our hands over the problem and not rolling up our sleeves and getting rid of these problem officers. There are so many of them. And what goes along with this is massive police perjury. Because in order to sustain these arrests, the officers have to lie about the grounds for them. In order to sustain these searches, the officers have to lie to sustain them. And you heard that one example that was given. So we have a real problem that can't be treated just by counseling and changing the culture. No, these guys who are part of this culture have to go. And the quicker we get them gone, the quicker we can reform this department.
And the police commissioner there in Baltimore saying this is no doubt a tough moment. This is a moment, though, to get better. We'll see if what changes happen, how quickly it happens, and how the trust within the community is regained. Billy Murphy, thank you so much.